Okay, so this is the afternoon session on Saturday, September 2nd. So this is the session beginning at 2:10 p.m. Okay. Okay, so this morning we have gone through, in a rather comprehensive way, we've gone through the Abhidhamma treatment of the aggregate of material form, the Rupa Kanda. And now, normally, as we know in the sequence of the 5 aggregates, according to the sutta method, we go from material form to feeling, then to perception, then to the mental formations, then to consciousness. But the Visuddhimagga is going to use an Abhidhammic method of explaining the aggregate of consciousness. And so it takes the aggregate of consciousness as the basis or starting point, and will elaborate the entire the entire Abhidhammic system of consciousness. And then on that basis, it will discuss the aggregates of feeling, perception, and mental formations. Okay, so coming to the text, can you see in the back? All right. So? Okay, so it says, among the remaining aggregates, whatever has the characteristic of being felt should be understood as the feeling aggregate. Whatever has the characteristic of perceiving should be understood as the perception aggregate. And whatever has the characteristic of forming, or I would say of constructing, of composing, should be understood as the formations aggregate. And then whatever has the characteristic of cognizing, the Pali word here is vijanana, which is the act of being conscious, should be understood as the consciousness aggregate. But then it says, since the rest, that is the other 3 aggregates, are easy to understand when the consciousness aggregate has been understood, we shall therefore begin with the commentary on the consciousness aggregate. So the Visuddhimagga is taking, in order to use the Abhidhamma method, it's taking the consciousness aggregate as the starting point of explanation. Okay, now, yesterday, when I went through the sutta treatment of the 5 aggregates, we saw that the suttas consistently and repeatedly explain the aggregate of consciousness simply as the 6 classes of consciousness: eye consciousness, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind consciousness. And so the sutta treatment is very concise, very direct and experiential. But now the Visuddhimagga is going to introduce all of the possible differentiations in consciousness. And basically, it is bringing in the canonical Abhidhamma, expounds the different types of mind states, not by using the word consciousness or vijnana, but rather it uses the word citta, which is usually rendered as mind. But here the Visuddhimagga says that the words vijnana, citta, and mano are one in meaning. And I think Nyanamoli had a note on this. I just highlighted a few important points in his note. Okay, it says vijnana, which he renders, and I do too, by consciousness, technically it is bare cognition considered apart from feeling, perception, or the mental formations. The other word, mano, technically is confined to the sixth internal base. That is, of the six faculties, it is the mind faculty. And then chitta technically refers to a momentary type situation, which is considered as vijnana in relation to its concomitants, that the associated feeling, perception, and mental formations. And so in a citta, there is the aspect of knowing the object, which is really the operation of the vijnana khandha. The aggregate of consciousness is that which knows, which is aware. And what distinguishes the consciousness are really the operation of the other factors. But because of the influence of the other factors, we could also distinguish the consciousness as of various kinds. And so there are two primary ways in which consciousness in this text is going to be distinguished following the Abhidhamma system. One is according to its kind, and according to the kind, okay, Nyanamoli uses the translation, which I don't like at all, profitable, unprofitable, and indeterminate. Yeah, the word that he translates as profitable is the word kusala, which I would translate as wholesome. Other translators use skillful. So either one is okay, wholesome or skillful. But please let us avoid, in this commercially decimated culture, let us avoid the word profitable. Okay, the second kind is what Nyanamoli translates unprofitable, which I would translate unwholesome. Other translators would use unskillful. And then the third kind, okay, we both agree here, or I follow Nyanamoli in rendering the third kind as indeterminate. And the indeterminate is that which is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. And as we will see, the indeterminate comprises two types of consciousness. One is called vipaka, which means resultant consciousness. That is consciousness which is the result of karma. So many states of consciousness that arise as the result of past karma. The karma and the karmic consciousness will be wholesome or unwholesome. But the result of karma, we can refer to it as wholesome resultant or unwholesome resultant. That is the result of wholesome karma or the result of unwholesome karma. But that resultant consciousness in itself is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. Karmically, we say it's indeterminate or neutral because it's just the result. It is not creating new karma. And so that resultant consciousness does not have a moral quality to it. The moral quality belongs to the wholesome consciousness, and negatively, as immoral karma or an immoral quality, belongs to the unwholesome consciousness. So the result is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. So that is one kind of indeterminate consciousness. The other kind of indeterminate consciousness is called functional consciousness. There's a technical Pali word for this. The word is kirya or kriya. I think in this way, I think it's a long A. So this is this word kriya is sometimes translated as functional, and this designates certain moments of consciousness that perform just, we should call them routine functions in the process of cognition, in the process of knowing an object. These types of consciousness perform just routine functions. That's one type of functional consciousness. The other type of functional consciousness are the states of consciousness of an arahat. So from our perspective, we would look at the states of consciousness of the arahat and think of them as wholesome because they're good or beautiful states of consciousness. But technically, in the Abhidhamma system, the word wholesome refers to the creation of wholesome karma. And so the consciousness of an arahat does not create any karma. So an arahat will do good deeds and think good thoughts, and when he goes into deep meditation, he'll enter the jhanas and so forth. But those states of consciousness, the consciousness behind those activities, is not creating any karma, neither wholesome karma and certainly not unwholesome karma, because the arhat has eliminated craving and ignorance, which are the underlying deep roots of karma. Okay, so this is the distinction according to kind, which is threefold, or we could even say fourfold. The four kinds will be wholesome, unwholesome, then indeterminate, divided into resultant and functional. Okay, the other way of distinguishing consciousness is according to plane. And now to bring in this explanation, I have to speak a little bit about the Buddhist cosmology or view of the universe. So, according to the Buddhist cosmology, there are three mundane planes of existence, or maybe just say three planes of existence. Okay, the sense sphere realm comprises, I believe it's something like 11 planes, subordinate planes. So we have various hell realms, then we have the realm of the animals, the realm of afflicted spirits. Sometimes they're called hungry ghosts, in Chinese, the ugui. It seems a lot of people know that. Okay, so the afflicted spirits. Then we have the human realm, and sometimes mentioned as a separate realm, the asura. These are the titans or the anti-gods. And then we have the heavenly realms. And there are something like 6 heavenly realms. So we take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 heavenly realms. And so we have 11 planes of existence within the sense sphere. And the lower realms, especially these 3, sometimes we put this up too. These 4 are said to be the result, to arise as the result of unwholesome karma. And then the human realm and the heavenly realms result from wholesome karma. Wholesome karma of a relatively, let's say, limited degree of wholesomeness. Okay, then beyond the sense sphere realm is what is called the fine material realm, or the realm of subtle form. And this realm consists of numerous, there are about 15 or 14 or 15 planes of existence in this realm. And these planes are beyond our sphere of ordinary experience, completely beyond. These are the realms that correspond to the attainment in the human realm of the 4 jhanas, the 4 meditative absorptions. And so those human meditators, human beings who practice meditation and achieve the jhanas, are creating the powerful, wholesome karma, which, when it gets the opportunity to bring rebirth, will bring rebirth into the fine material realm. And depending upon the level of the jhana and the strength of that jhana, that will determine which particular plane the being takes rebirth into. And so the 15 or so planes of existence in the fine material realm are, we could say, the reflections, the cosmic reflections of the jhanic attainments in the human realm. Okay, in the fine material realm, material form, or rupa, still exists, but it has become extremely subtle. So only the subtle forms of matter exist in the fine material realm. The grosser forms don't exist there. So the matter has become very refined in that realm. Beyond the fine material realm, there is another sphere or realm called the immaterial realm, in which matter has completely vanished. This immaterial realm consists of 4 planes of existence, and those 4 planes correspond to the 4 immaterial attainments. And these 4 planes are the plane of boundless space, the plane of boundless consciousness, the plane of nothingness or no thingness, and the plane of neither perception nor non-perception. So those are also the names of the four meditative attainments. So those yogis who master one or another of these meditative attainments and maintain those meditative attainments, if that meditative attainment becomes the factor determining rebirth, then that yogi will be reborn into one or another of these immaterial planes of existence, the particular plane that corresponds to their level of attainment. Now, all of these, okay, so these are the three realms of existence. We'll highlight the realms, the primary realms. And according to the Buddha's teaching, existence in all of these realms is ultimately unsatisfactory, because in all of these realms are subject to impermanence. So life in any of these realms eventually comes to an end, and then death takes place, and one is reborn elsewhere as determined by one's accumulations of karma. And so the ultimate goal for the Buddha's teaching is that state that transcends all of these realms, and that is nibbana, nirvana, which is beyond all of the conditioned realms of existence. And so nibbana is called the unconditioned, and because there's no birth and death in nibbana, it's sometimes called the birthless and the deathless. The way to Nibbana, the immediate entrance to Nibbana, consists in certain states of consciousness which are arrived at through the systematic progressive development of meditation, particularly insight meditation based on a foundation of concentration. And so those states of consciousness that bring the attainment of Nibbana are called the supramundane states of consciousness, or world transcending states. In Pali it's Lokuttara. Loka is world, Uttara is beyond. So states of consciousness that take one beyond the conditioned world. And the states that bring this realization of Nibbana are called the four types of path consciousness, and they bring as their results the four kinds of fruit consciousness. We're going to come to these eventually, but I'm just sort of laying them down in the abstract here. Okay, so corresponding, as I said, to these different realms of existence, there are different types of consciousness. And so in this way, we get four spheres of consciousness, which we can see most clearly in this table from the Comprehensive Manual of Abhidhamma. This is the table on page 28, which shows us the 89 or 121 chittas at a glance. So the important distinction here, first we have the mundane chittas. These are all of the chittas or states of consciousness that pertain to the world. And of these we have types of sense sphere chittas, states of consciousness pertaining to the sense sphere. Then we have the fine material sphere chittas, which are 15 in number. And then the immaterial sphere chittas, which are 12 in number. And then the supramundane chitas, which are 8 in number, but that number can be, by a finer method of division, can be increased up to 20. And now, an important point to understand is that chitas, states of consciousness that belong to a particular sphere, are not confined to the realm of existence corresponding to their name. Let me repeat that. States of consciousness that pertain to a particular sphere are not confined to the planes of existence that correspond to their name. What this means is that the sense sphere chitas are the states of consciousness which are typical of the sense sphere plane of existence, the sense sphere realm. But sense sphere states of consciousness can arise elsewhere. They can arise in the fine material plane of existence. They can arise in the immaterial plane of existence. And the fine material sphere chitas are not confined to the fine material plane of existence, because these chitas, the wholesome chitas of the fine material sphere, these are the chitas or states of consciousness of the jhanas, the 4 or 5 jhanas. And so a human being is living in the sense sphere realm of existence. But a human being who practices diligent samadhi meditation might achieve the jhanas, and then when they enter into the jhana, they are experiencing the state of consciousness that is typical of, that pertains to the fine material sphere of existence. And if that human meditator goes beyond the jhanas and develops the immaterial attainments, they will be experiencing the state of consciousness that is typical of the beings in the sense sphere realm of existence. So we have to keep this distinction in mind between realms of existence and spheres of consciousness. The spheres of consciousness are, in a sense, coordinated with or connected with particular realms of existence, but those states of consciousness are not confined to those realms of existence. Okay, this is sort of the preparation of laying the groundwork for the exposition now of the 89 kinds of consciousness that is going to take place in what follows. Okay, so now in this section, the Visuddhimagga is going to be explaining the wholesome states of consciousness. And these are fourfold according to plane, or according to the sphere to which they pertain. So as I said, the wholesome consciousness can pertain to the sense sphere, to the fine material sphere, to the immaterial sphere, and we can have beyond that the supramundane or world-transcending wholesome consciousness. And it's always helpful to look over to this table. And so here we see in this table the sense sphere beautiful citas. Here we have sense sphere wholesome, 8. We have fine material sphere wholesome, 5. Because in the Abhidhamma, the 4 jhanas of the suttas are divided further so that we get 5 jhanas. And we'll see why a little bit later. And then the immaterial sphere wholesome citas are of 4 kinds. And the supramundane citas of these, the wholesome citas, are the 4 paths, the 4 supramundane paths. Okay, so we're going to begin, we begin at the bottom and work up. So we begin with the sense sphere wholesome consciousness. And this is said to be eightfold and is classified according to the distinction of the feeling that accompanies it, according to whether or not it's associated with knowledge, and according to whether or not it has to be prompted. And again, the comprehensive manual of Abhidhamma is helpful for seeing in the form of a chart or table the distinctions in those types of consciousness. But it starts with the unwholesome. Okay, so from this table, we can see the 8 types of sense sphere. We're concerned here only with the wholesome. This lays out all of the beautiful citas, but we're concerned with the wholesome, which is this column. So we have 4 that are accompanied by joy. Joy is a pleasant mental feeling. So this is a pleasant feeling which takes the form of joy. And 4 are accompanied by what is called equanimity. And this is not equanimity in the sense of balance of mind or kind of detached observation. But the word equanimity, or Pali upekkha, is used here simply to indicate a neutral feeling, a feeling which is not pleasant, not painful. And so the sense sphere wholesome states of consciousness are always accompanied either by a pleasant feeling, one of joy, or by a neutral feeling, never with a painful feeling. So when we do engage in wholesome activities, we don't experience, at that time, we don't experience feelings of sadness, grief, tension, disappointment, and so on. If those feelings arise, it's because at that moment the mind has drifted into an unwholesome state. Okay, the second distinguishing factor is whether knowledge or understanding is present or absent. So, of the states accompanied by joy, 2 are also accompanied by knowledge, and 2 don't have knowledge or understanding present. And then of the states accompanied by neutral feeling, 2 will be associated with knowledge, and 2 will not have knowledge. They'll be disconnected from knowledge. Then each of these is distinguished according to, each of these pairs is distinguished according to whether it is prompted or spontaneous. So spontaneous means that the state of mind arises by itself. just naturally or spontaneously. The opposite of that, unprompted, means either that we have to try to persuade ourselves to engage in some wholesome activity, or others persuade us and then we follow their advice. So there's some kind of pressure put on us, either internally by ourselves or externally by others. Is this clear? Yeah. Okay, the Visuddhimagga gives examples to illustrate these distinctions. Okay, don't forget Nyanamoli is translating back in the 1950s, so he uses what now seems to us as being, what's the expression, gender-biased knowledge. So when he's talking about an individual, he'll always say a man, a man, a man. So now we would say a person or somebody. Okay, so when somebody is happy, he has an excellent gift to be given or finds a worthy recipient, so in that case, joy arises, then this person has some understanding, say, of the principles of the Dhamma, that giving is a meritorious deed, which brings wholesome karma, which creates wholesome karma. And so they have right view present. This is not the higher right view of dependent origination or Four Noble Truths, but this is the mundane right view of the law of karma. So they have right view present, and they see that there's a gift to be given. They have some wealth, some food, or some flowers, something to make an offering. And so they have this right view, which understands that there's karmic merit in giving, and then spontaneously, not urged by others, one performs this meritorious deed such as giving, then on that occasion, the consciousness is accompanied by joy. Of course, a joyful feeling arises at the opportunity to give. And there's knowledge present, which takes the form of this right view. And since the person gives without any hesitation, not being urged by others, so the citta, the state of consciousness, is unprompted. Okay, in the second case, we have the person who is joyful in the way explained, and the person has the right view of karma and its results, but initially they're hesitant about making the gift or taking on some other wholesome action, but they do it hesitantly and sort of persuading themselves to do it, or else they're urged on by others. So in that case, it's said that the consciousness is of the prompted kind. So in that case, we have the first is spontaneous, the second is prompted. They're both joyful, both associated with knowledge. Okay, now we have the case of the consciousness that is not connected with knowledge, that is dissociated from knowledge. So here the text gives the example of young children who, when they sit, and of course the Visuddhimagga is being written by a scholastic monk, so it always describes the examples, its examples in terms of what a monk who's living pretty much within the four walls of the monastery will witness or have first-hand experience of. Okay, so the young children who habitually they follow the behavior of their elders, their parents and other relatives. Okay, so when they see monks arrive at the house, then they're joyful, and then whatever they have, they take some maybe food item or some flowers or something and make an offering or pay homage. So they're doing some wholesome deed generated by a wholesome state of consciousness, but they don't have any knowledge or understanding of what they're doing. So this is a deed, a wholesome deed or a wholesome state of consciousness that's accompanied by joy. It's spontaneous, but disconnected from knowledge, not accompanied by right view. Okay, then the next case is also, example is also that of children, but in this case the children don't make that offering spontaneously, but their parents or other relatives have to urge them. Yeah. The monk arrives at the house and the parents say, bow down to him. And the kid says, no, I don't want to bow down. And the parents take the kid and say, you bow down. Boom. And then we say a wholesome state of consciousness. Okay, so this is where the state of, I'm exaggerating there, but they act when they're persuaded by their relatives. And so this is a state which is still joyful, because they like doing it, but there's no understanding really of the significance of the action, and they're doing it because they've been instructed to do so by their elders. Okay, so that takes care of the first 4 types of wholesome sense sphere consciousness. And these 4 are all accompanied by joyful feeling. Then the states 5 through 8, these are states which are devoid of joy. In other words, they're accompanied by the neutral feeling, accompanied by equanimity. Okay, so this takes us through the sense sphere types of sense sphere wholesome consciousness. And so, sort of wrapping up, it says sense sphere wholesome consciousness should be understood as of 8 kinds, classed according to whether there's joy or equanimity, knowledge or lack of knowledge, and whether it's spontaneous or prompted. Okay, now we come to the consciousness of the fine material sphere. And this is said to be 5-fold. And it's classed according to the association with the jhana factors. And to see how it's 5-fold, let us go to the table. Okay, now in the suttas, the jhanas are always explained to be 4-fold. We have the first jhana, second jhana, third, and fourth jhana. To pass from the first jhana to the second jhana, it's said in the sutta formula that the meditator overcomes 2 of the jhana factors. In Pali, vitaka and vichara. Here it's translated initial application and sustained application. Other places, I think Nyanamoli uses initial thought, sustained thought. Whatever the translation, doesn't matter, but to move from the first jhana to the second, these two factors are eliminated. But these are two different mental factors, and so the Abhidhamma uses a finer method of analysis, and it distinguishes between the first jhana, in which all of these five factors are present: initial application, sustained application, zest, I would rather translate as rapture, or elation, mental elation, then happiness and one-pointedness. So these are the five factors of the first jhana. In the suttas, one moves from the first jhana to the second jhana by eliminating initial application and sustained application. So then in the sutta formula for the second jhana, one has just these three factors of rapture, happiness or pleasure, and one-pointedness. But the Abhidhamma distinguishes the second jhana as a separate state in which initial application has been eliminated, but sustained application or vichara is still present. And then the second jhana of the sutta scheme then becomes the third jhana of the Abhidhamma scheme. The fourth jhana of the sutta scheme wait, I think I got mixed up. Okay, the second jhana in the Abhidhamma system is new, so the second jhana of the sutta scheme becomes the third jhana of the Abhidhamma system. The third jhana of the sutta system becomes the fourth jhana of the Abhidhamma system. Then the fourth jhana of the sutta system becomes the fifth jhana of the Abhidhamma system. So in that way we get a finer differentiation of states. And so the Visuddhimagga here is just when it's explaining the wholesome consciousness of the fine material sphere is fivefold. Well, actually, this is exactly what I just covered. So but Jnanamoli uses different terminology. So the first is associated with applied thought, sustained thought. Let's use this translation: rapture, pleasure, and concentration or one-pointedness. The second leaves out applied thought. The third leaves out sustained thought. And so in the third, we have just rapture, pleasure, and one-pointedness. Then in the fourth, we have just happiness or pleasure and one-pointedness. And this happiness or pleasure, this is pleasant feeling, which is the feeling of these first four jhanas. But then, in making the transition to the fifth jhana, because pleasant feeling is relatively gross, so in making that transition, when we arrive at the fifth jhana, the highest jhana in this group of meditative states, the pleasant feeling is replaced by neutral feeling, which is called equanimity. And so in this fifth jhana, we have equanimity or neutral feeling and one-pointedness. So those are the five wholesome states of the fine material sphere. Okay, now suppose the meditator reaches the fifth jhana of this scheme and is not content with that attainment, and they want to experience the states of samadhi beyond the fifth jhana. So then continuing with their cultivation, eventually using the appropriate method, as the mind becomes further unified, then they will attain the meditative, they'll attain the immaterial or formless meditative states. And these are the four states which correspond to the immaterial realm of existence. And so the first is said to be the jhana, or absorption, of the base of boundless space. The second is the base of boundless consciousness. The third, the base of nothingness. The fourth, the base of neither perception nor non-perception. And let's look at the manual. Okay, so we have here the four wholesome types of consciousness, the base of infinite or boundless space, which takes as its object the concept of boundless space, the base of infinite consciousness, which takes as its direct object, this gets rather technical, the consciousness of the base of infinite space, the base of nothingness, which takes as its object the concept of the non-existence of anything substantial in this infinite consciousness. Then there's the base of neither perception nor non-perception, which takes as its object the consciousness of the base of nothingness. I didn't want to get actually into the objects of these states. And so with this, we've gone through the wholesome, mundane states of consciousness. We might as well just mention the four wholesome, world-transcending states of consciousness are the four chittas, or states of consciousness, that correspond to the four super-mundane paths. Whoops. So these are the four stages of realization or higher attainment that bring in steps the realization of the final goal. So we have the path of stream entry, which cuts off the three grossest fetters. Then the path of, and as a stream enterer, one then is bound for only at most 7 more existences, either in the human realm or the heavenly realms. If one develops the second path, then one becomes a once returner. This is the path of the once returner, who will come back to this sense sphere realm of existence one more time. Actually, it's said either 1 or 2 more times, depending on whether one comes to the human realm or the heavenly realm. If one goes further and reaches the third wholesome path consciousness, then one becomes a non-returner. One cuts off the connection to the sense sphere realm, and then one will be reborn, most likely in the fine material realm, bound to reach final liberation there without ever coming back to the sense sphere realm. And then if one develops the path still further, and one attains or cultivates and realizes the fourth path consciousness, that is the consciousness of, or the path of arahatship, which cuts off the remaining fetters, then one is liberated from all future rebirths, from all defilements and all future rebirths. So those are the 4 world-transcending or supramundane states of consciousness. Okay, I think it's time for us to take a break, and I think not only a break, but I think they want to take a photograph.